This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, hope you guys are able to see the screen and hope I'm audible as well. So yesterday there was a demo session. We have discussed about a few things, basic things about what is performance testing and various tools in the market. What are the most widely used tools in the market like LoadRunner and JMeter. We have also discussed about the LoadRunner architecture. What are the different components of LoadRunner architecture? And we've also discussed about uh, sample recording of how to generate a script. Okay, I mean we have selected some steps and we recorded a simple flow, and we have discussed about the course content. We've also discussed about the yeah, that's it. I mean mostly. I mean we have addressed some of the questions then. So those who didn't join yesterday, I kindly request you to go through yesterday's session. That YouTube link is shared in the WhatsApp group. Please do go and watch. And in today's session, we will be discussing about the types of performance testing. So here, I mean, yesterday I have mentioned a generic statement or definition for performance testing, like what is performance testing? So checking the performance of an application by applying some load. That's what we discussed yesterday. So I've taken one bank application example. So if let's say 200 or 300 people are accessing the bank, okay, and performing some actions like transfer money, paying credit card bill, downloading statement and all, how the bank application will respond. Okay, so that's how we do the performance of applications. Load is nothing but here number of users. For now, you can just understand that load is nothing but number of users. So with how many users, what is the volume, what is the user, what is the number of users that you are testing? Okay, that is load. So when you when you test any application for performance by applying some load, okay, mandatory. By load word is mandatory here. Without load, without I mean with single user, you cannot do a performance testing. Okay. Now I will explain the textbook kind of definition in our upcoming session. For now, let's discuss the types of performance testing. Okay, I do have PPT slides for that, but I feel we will go with this notepad, by writing some notes and understanding the concept. Later on, I can share the PPT slides as well. Okay, so the different types of performance testing. So types of performance testing. First one is a load test. Okay. Uh, okay. Then you have stress testing. Then you have endurance or soak or duration. So all these are same. The name might be different, but the meaning is same. Then you have uh, volume testing. Okay. Uh, or you can say you can write scalability testing. Okay, you can have volume testing. There is something called failover testing, which is famous in recent times. Then, apart from all this, you also have something like smoke test, okay, and then you have something called spike test. Okay, let me write spike test here only. So, smoke test, I am writing it separately because it is not actually a part or type of performance testing. It's something different, which I'll explain in some time. So first is uh, okay. Out of these different types of performance testing, we will discuss about these five and this spike. Okay, I mean what are those theoretically? This failover testing we will discuss tomorrow. The reason is to understand the failover testing, you have to first know what is a server, what is an application server, what is a web server, what is a database server. So you have to understand some of the concepts related to server. So then only you can understand what do you mean by failover testing, how exactly it is performed by us. Okay, so we will discuss this tomorrow, because tomorrow first thing we will discuss about servers. Okay, and then we will cover failover testing tomorrow. Now we will discuss these points. So the first thing is load test. What do you mean by load test? One more important point here, before I start load test. So I told you that when you check the performance of an application by applying some load, it is called performance testing. And load is nothing but number of users. So performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. So we will discuss these. So basically now performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. So now keep that in mind. Now load test is what we will discuss. We'll start first. So load test is nothing but checking the speed of the application. Okay, checking the speed of the application. How fast is the application? Okay, how fast the page is loading. Okay, when you click a button or when you click a link on a browser, how fast the page is loading. Okay, so the term speed is directly related to load test. So load test is nothing but checking the speed of the application. Okay, again by applying some load, by applying load. Again, load is nothing but number of users. Load is number of users. Now, this load test we will run for 1 hour. How much time we will run? Load test. Load test will run for 1 hour, basically 1 hour of study time. So I'll tell you what is study time later, but just understand, but just remember that load test we will run for 1 hour. Okay. So what is that you verify from load test? Okay, you are running a load test. Okay, with some number of users. Let's say 500 users. Okay. So you let's take any sample application, any bank application or whatever it is. So when you say load, okay, it's nothing but number of users. For example, 500 users. Okay, if the client is asking you to test a bank application with load, the load can be like this, like 500 users, 200 users, 300 users, like that. Okay, and then the load test will run for 1 hour. With these 500 users will run for 1 hour. Okay, now after running the load test, what exactly you will get it, or what exactly you will find out? What is your job? Okay, so we will find the bottlenecks. Bottlenecks means issues. Performance bottlenecks. We can say performance bottlenecks. We'll find the performance bottlenecks. Like what are the response times? What are the response times? So yesterday I showed you, right? For example, we ran some test. Okay, in yesterday's demo session also, I was showing you these response times. Like if you click, or if you click a link, or if you click a button, the request will go to server, and you will get the response. How much time it is taking, okay, to get the response? If you click a link on the browser, for example, if I open a Chrome browser, okay, now I click on some link. How much time it is taking to load the page? For example, I'm clicking Google. So when I click Google, how much time it is taking? So you see it almost loaded in a second. Okay. Now if I click on this image, how much time it is taking to load that page? So like that, we so every action that you perform on the UI, okay, it will tell us how much time it has taken to get the response from the server. So when I click some image here, so how much time it has taken to get the response from server, Google server? So like that. So what is that? What is that called? Response time. Response time. Okay. So response time is nothing but the amount of time taken with the server to send, okay, to send it back to client. So you see here, I mean in Vusion, our tool, this is where you can see the response times. Okay, we will discuss that in detail practically later. But when you run a load test, we will try to identify the performance bottlenecks, like what are the response times. So we will list out all the transactions or actions which are getting high response times. Okay, that is the first thing that we will see. We will also discuss about uh, like apart from bottlenecks, we will see if there is any other bottlenecks like uh, no more heap utilization. But these are server side metrics. We'll also verify some server side metrics like heap utilization, CPU utilization. Okay, so we will discuss these terms later in detail, but these are also one of the metrics that we will validate. Okay, so like every machine, okay, will have CPU, and you have to monitor the CPU utilization. If it exceeds some threshold value, like client said that or the project head said that the CPU utilization should not exceed 80%. Once it exceeds 80%, that's a performance issue. Okay, so the threshold value will be given to us. If it exceeds the threshold value, it's a performance issue. So if it reaches 100%, what will happen? The application will crash, or the server will crash. If it reaches 100%, what is the worst case? Server will crash. Okay, so that is also an issue. So primarily we will look into this. How the application is responding, which page is loading very slow, which page is loading very fast. All these things we will find out from load test. Okay, so this is about lotus, and this is the first major test that we run. This is the first major type of test that we run. Okay, uh, why am I saying this? Because without running a load test, you cannot run stress test, endurance test, scalability test, volume test, failover test. You cannot run those. Why? Because when load test itself is a failure, when load test itself is having some issues, you cannot proceed with other types of testing. So that's the reason I told this is the first major type of test that we run. Okay, now if this is a success, then you can go with stress testing or other types of testing. If this is a failure, then you cannot do other types of testing. No point in doing that. Basically, it doesn't mean that you cannot do. There is no point in doing other types of performance testing. So you have to work with the development team and get the issue sorted related to performance. Okay, then. Okay, any questions still here? Did you understand what is a load test? So we are running the load test to see the performance, that is in terms of speed. How fast the application is loading, how fast the pages are loading, how fast user is able to navigate from one page to another page when there is some load on it. Without load, you cannot judge, or you cannot say the performance is poor or performance is better. You cannot say. You need to apply some load. Okay, now who will give these 500 users to us? Client, either client or business analyst, or you can say application team. Anyone can provide us this information. Okay, so this information we have to gather as part of non-functional requirements, which we will discuss in a day after tomorrow session. The reason is there are different scenarios the way we gather the requirements, especially for this users and the target volumes. There are different scenarios that we need to cover, so it's a different session altogether. Okay, so at a high level, hope you understood what is a load test, what exactly we are doing as part of this load test. Any questions till now? We'll wait for another 30 seconds. I'm just trying to give you overview of the different types of performance testing. So we will see these things practically, in our upcoming sessions later. How to run a load test and all those things. Okay. Then we will move on to stress testing. So stress testing, as the name suggests, applying more stress. Okay. So how much of stress more than the load test? For example, if load test is run with 500 users, probably you can run a stress testing with 600 users, 700 users, 800 users, like that. Okay, so applying more stress, okay, or running the test with more number of users than the load test. Okay, for example, you can take 700 users, because considering the uh, above load test numbers. So if you see in this load test, we have given 500 users. So stress means you are stressing the application beyond the load that we applied in the load test. That means you're trying to give more stress to the application and see how it is performing, in spite of increasing the users, how the application is responding. Okay, how fast the pages are loading. So that's everything about stress testing. So this also can be done within 1 hour. If you want to, this also can be done within 1 hour. Okay, who will give the number of users? You can decide with the help of business analyst or application team how much extent you want to stress. Do you want to stress by 25% or 30%, something like that? You can do that, or you can give a try. Okay, if someone is asking you to go and stress the application until it breaks, you can do that. You can do that type of testing also. Okay, so what we will find out here, same thing. We will find the performance bottlenecks, response times. That means in spite of increasing the users, in spite of increasing the load, how the application is responding. I can mention like here, in spite of increasing the load, okay, how the application is responding. That's about the load test. Is all about stress testing. Okay, now any questions here till now? Any questions? So it's nothing but just an increase in the number of users, okay, than the load test. Remaining other things will be same. Okay, now the next type of test. Any questions? You can ask me. Next type is endurance or soak or duration testing. So this name, endurance or soak or duration, this is the meaning is same. Different projects use different term here. Some projects use the term endurance, some projects use the term soak, some projects use the term duration. Okay, so what is this endurance or soak or duration? This type of testing is related to, okay, this type of testing is related to the term stability. That means we are we are verifying the stability of the application. We are verifying the stability of the application. Okay, after running, stability of the application by running for longer duration. So, what do you mean by this? Means this endurance test or soak test or duration test is simply to find out the stability of the application. How stable is the application? Okay, so for that reason, we have to run this test for minimum of 3 hours. You can run for 5 hours, you can run for 8 hours, you can run for 1 day, you can run for 2 days, you can run for 3 days, or you can run for 5 days, depending on your project. So 99% or 90% of the projects, they run for 5 hours or 8 hours or 1 day. Okay, very rarely they will run for 3 days or 5 days. Okay, I mean, very rare. 99 90 more than 95% they use 5 hours or 8 hours. So what do you mean by that? Why they will run for those many hours? To find out the stability, how stable is the application. So what do you exactly mean by that? So for example, you are running a 3 hours load test or 5 hours load test. First 1 hour, okay, first hour, on an average you are getting a response time of, let's say, 1.5 seconds. Okay, just take for login transaction, don't consider for all. This is just for login. Okay, for login it is taking 1.5 seconds in first 1 hour on an average. Okay, I'll write average here. On an average, we are getting 1.5 seconds response time the first 1 hour. So the second 1 hour should also be something similar to this, like 1.5 or let's say 1.6 or 1.8, something like that, or max let's say 2.5, no problem. Okay, so let's say in the fifth hour, okay, this is second hour here. Okay, in the fifth hour, the response time should also be something similar to this. That means how long you run, okay, how much time you run doesn't matter. How much time you run doesn't matter. The performance should be stable. So first hour you are getting good response times. Second hour you are getting some good response times. Third hour, if you say no, sorry, fifth hour you can say no, I'm getting 4 seconds, okay, or 8 seconds. No, that is wrong. That is something is going wrong. You cannot get high response times. Okay, there should be some stability maintained. In the first 1 hour, how the response times are coming up. Similarly, you should get the response times in a similar way throughout the test. Okay, now just to recollect the yesterday's statement, what is the industry standard of response time? 2 seconds. So that means if you click a link or if you click a button, the user should navigate from one page to another page in just 2 seconds. That is the industry standard. However, it can change depending on the project. Some projects will accept 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds also. Okay, depending on the project complexity, architecture, and so on. Okay, now mostly the main reason for performing the endurance test or soak test or duration test is to understand the stability, how stable is the application. Okay, so the response time should be stable throughout the test. So you have to analyze the results for every hour, like first 1 hour, second 1 hour, third 1 hour, third hour, fourth hour, fifth hour. You have to analyze the results like that. Okay, apart from that, there is a chance of getting, there's a high chance of getting memory leak issue. Okay, what is memory leak? We will discuss later. It's a different concept, but there will be some issue in the performance testing, which we call it as memory leak. And when it happens, let's say the CPU utilization or heap utilization will increase. Okay, especially the heap utilization. If I take an example. Okay, so here heap utilization. Okay, let's say if it is reaching 100% for no reason, that means there is some issue. It should not reach. It should not exceed beyond the threshold value. So if it is exceeding beyond threshold value, that means there is some issue. Some memory leak issue might be happening there. So you have to find out the issue. So what is memory leak? How do we identify it? What is heap dumps? How do we download heap dumps? How to analyze heap dumps? All these things we'll discuss later. But endurance test is nothing but to know the stability of the application. Okay, for how long we run? We run for 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, like that. Okay, just to see how the response times are coming up. Is there any memory leak issue? How do you know memory leak issue is happening or not? You have to use APM tool like AppDynamics or Dynatrace. You have to use, and you can find out. Okay, so this is about endurance test. Any question? One more important point. What is the load to be tested here? See, here we tested 500 users in load test. Here we tested with more number of users than load test. What about this? In some projects, okay, they go with 100% load. Like when I say 100% load, the load what we applied in the load test, the load that we applied in the load test. In some projects, okay, in some projects, it is 75% of load. So that means if load test is run with 500 users, so endurance test will be run with 375 users, 75% of it. Okay, in some projects, but in some projects, same thing, full 100% load you have to apply. How much load you used for load test, same number of users you have to run for endurance test also. It depends on projects, guys. If in your projects, if they are following something, you can continue to follow the same, or else if you have to decide, then you go with this, the better option. Okay, go with 100% load, no problem. Okay, any questions? Did you guys understand what is this endurance test or soak test or duration test all about? Okay, so I will share this document at the end. Any other questions for time being? Did you guys understand what is the endurance test, load test, stress test, endurance? Fourth one is scalability test. Okay, so what do you mean by term scalability? So here you I mentioned, right, performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. Speed is load test, stability is endurance test, scalability is nothing but scalability test only. How scalable is your application? So basically this type of test will be run considering the future growth. So considering the future growth, okay, the load will be given by the client. Okay, and it will be run for 1 hour only, 1 hour test. Okay, so for example, let's say you run the load test with 500 users. Yes. Okay, here you see you run load test with 500 users. Now client is assuming that in next 6 months or 1 year, the business will grow by 50%. In next 6 months or 1 year, business will go by 50% or 100%, let's say. Now, what you have to do, considering the client input, okay, considering the business growth in next 1 year by 100%, now itself you have to test for that additional 100% also. So if you are running a load test with 500 users, okay, now, uh, okay, client said, 100% growth in next 1 year. So what you have to do now itself. So let's say if load test is executed with 500 users, then scalability test scalability test will be run with 1,000 users. That is, you can call 200% load. Why? Because normally load test I ran with 500 users. That's fine. But because client said there will be 100% growth in next 1 year, now what I thought is, okay, let's see that how the application is responding when I am running the test with double the users, that is 1,000. Because client is saying 100% growth, right? So what is 100% to 500? 500. So 500 plus 500, 1,000 users I have to run, okay, for scalability test. And recently, if you remember, okay, I'll tell you one example. Recently, we have seen the pandemic, right? I mean, it's still there, but the peak we have seen in 2020, 2020, 2020, 2021. Okay, so in 2021, sorry, in 2020, I guess, exactly, I think in the month of July, I guess. Okay, so I was working for one of the bank. Okay, I was working for one of the US bank. So the client told me that, hey, for our applications, because during that pandemic, during that peak time, nobody was going out, right? And obviously, people are not reaching out to banks for their work. They are mostly relying on bank application, online bank application. Now, what client observed is there is a huge increase in the number of users accessing the bank application just because they are not going out. Okay, so what client informed us is, hey, in the next 3 months, we are assuming that the number of people accessing or number of customers accessing the bank application will be increased by 400%, or will be increased up to 400%. That's what the client informed us. So, and they said, can you please check whether our applications are handling 400% load or not? That's what they told me. So what we have done, so okay, we have identified the application for which we have to do load test, and slowly, okay, what we have done is, first we have run 100% load test. See, directly you cannot run 400% load test. Just because client told you that in next 3 months the customers will access the bank application will be increased to 400%. See, you cannot run 400% load test directly. Why? Can anyone tell why? Any guess? Directly, why you should not run a complete full 400% load in the first instance itself? Can anyone tell? Any guess?
Apple, Apple, application may crash.
That is one reason. Another reason? Anyone? Just guess. Why? Okay, client said you have to run until 400%, but you cannot run 400% directly. The reason is
Yeah, we don't have the hardware metrics, right?
not no, okay. Not the main reason why we don't run directly 400 is if you run, okay, what is 100? Let's say 100% load is 500. What is 400%? 2000
Oh,
users. 2000 users is 400%. Now, why you should not run with 2000 users directly is if it crashes or if it fails somewhere, then you cannot say whether the application will withstand 200% or 300% also. Will you be able to tell, will you be able to guarantee that application will handle 200% or 300% load first? You cannot say. See, when you ran 400% directly, it failed, it crashed. The application could not withstand the 400% load, that is 2000 users, for example. Then you cannot guarantee that it can run, it can sustain to that 1000 users and 1500 users. You cannot say. That's the reason what we do. First, we run 100% load test. Then, if it is successful, we will run 200. If it is successful, then we will run 300. If it is successful, we will go for 400. Now, in the applications which we ran, some of the applications were crashing at 300%. Some of the applications were able to withstand 400% load. So, what was the solution for the applications for which it is crashing at 300%? To increase the infrastructure on urgent basis, on a very important priority. Why? Because pandemic is they have understood that it will be there for some more days. So definitely number of people accessing the application will be more. So they have to they cannot go and see whether they can tune anything in from code perspective or database perspective. They don't have much time. For time being, immediately they will increase the infrastructure, like heap, CPU utilization, CPU the CPU per processors, the configurations, the heap configurations, everything they will increase depending on what is the failure that we are getting. Okay, so when you have to follow the sequence. You directly cannot run this test. Okay, so hope you understood. So in your case also, if you get any requirement, something like that, you have to execute step by step. You cannot directly run. You cannot directly run directly. Okay, like the max load, you cannot directly run. Any questions so far? Okay, so next one is a volume test. So volume test is similar to it is similar to load test. There is no change. There is no change with respect to the test we run. That means we will the volume is same. That means users are same. Duration is same. Then how is it different from load test? The only difference is okay. The only difference is the amount of data that we have in the database. So this volume testing is purely related to testing the performance of some SQL queries or procedures or something like that. So what happens is you have to run a load test. Okay, the same load test you have to run, but the amount of data will be more in the volume test. In the database, you have to insert huge amount of data. So let's say now we are running a load test with 500 users, and for that the application has some, let's say 1 lakh records in the database. 1 lakh records are there in the database. Now let's take any college application. So let's say there is a new college which got started. In the first year they have some 50, let's say some 100 students, and 100 students information they will store in database, like student name, student ID, okay, student phone number, whatever it is, they will store in some database. Now after 10 years or 5 years, the students will increase to 10 5,000, 4,000, 3,000. That means the database records will increase, might increase from, let's say some 1 lakh to 5 lakhs, something like that. Some 5 lakh records might be there in the database. So considering the future growth of data, future growth of data in the database, now itself we will insert that much amount of data in the database intentionally, and then we will run a load test, which we are calling it as actually a volume test. So with the help of database administrator, okay, with the help of application team or DBA, database administrator, okay, you have to insert huge amount of data, huge amount of data into database, and then run the load test with similar volume and for 1 hour. So what do you identify? What do you find out from here? Are the SQL queries performing well? Okay, any database related issues identified? We have to identify. Okay, so because we have inserted huge amount of data, so the same functionality, when there is more amount of data in the database, how it is responding? See, simple, you are using a phone. When you purchase a phone, initially you have 50 photos or 20 photos. After 1 year you will have some 2000 photos or 5000 photos you will have. Then your mobile phone will respond little bit slow. Why? Because it is taking time to fetch the data, okay, fetch all the photos from the database. That's the reason it is taking time. Now what we are doing, intentionally we are inserting data into the database. Let's say we are testing mobile application only. Intentionally insert 5000 photos. Okay, and see, when you run a query to fetch some image, how much time it is taking. So that is important. So when it comes to volume testing, it is purely related to database. Okay, only thing you have to do is you have to insert huge amount of junk data into database and see how the application is responding, how the pages are loading, how the queries are performing, are there any long running queries. So those things you have to identify. Okay, so what is web server, application server, database server? We haven't discussed yet. We will discuss tomorrow. So you'll get more clarity after tomorrow's session. Okay, so hope you got some idea about volume test. So it is same as load test only, but the only difference is in terms of huge data that gets inserted into database. Okay, and then you are running a load test and analyzing the performance. Okay, then what else is there? You have failover testing, which we will discuss tomorrow. Then okay, then we have spike testing. So spike testing is nothing but just to see how the application is responding when there is a sudden increase in terms of users and there's a sudden decrease in terms of users. Like, you will suddenly increase the users and suddenly decrease the users. So when there is a sudden spike in terms of the load that we are applying to the application, then how it is responding, that's what we have to find out as part of spike testing. Okay, so it depends on the volume, depends on the number of users given by the application team. So you have to discuss with the application team with how many users you have to begin the spike testing, and then you schedule a sudden spike, sudden increase. You add some 100 users at a time. At a time you have to add 100 users. and see how it is responding. At a time you remove 100 users, how it is responding, like that. Okay, so you have to do spike testing. Then you have smoke test. I didn't add the smoke test to types of performance testing because smoke test is some generic test. It is not a type of performance testing actually. It doesn't come under performance testing, but it's a generic kind of test that we do to ensure that our scripts are working fine. For example, you develop your scripts. Okay, like yesterday we have seen how to record, how to create a script, right? We have seen yesterday, right? So when you create such scripts, okay, and you are about to run a load test in couple of hours. So before running the actual load test, run a smoke test. Okay, will run for like 5 to 15 minutes. You can run if you want, with very minimal users, like 10 to 50 max. Okay, and what will you identify from this? Whether your scripts are working fine from end to end, and whether there are any data related issues. So all these things you will find out in this mock test, and if this is successful, then go ahead and run the load test or whatever it is, stress test or endurance test or whatever it is. So before you run any type of test, any type of these tests, you have to run a smoke test. A smoke test is something which will assist you in knowing whether the scripts are working fine or not, and whether the proper data is given or not. Okay, we will run with minimum amount of time and with very minimal number of users. Okay, that is a smoke test. Any questions? We will see all these things practically. Any questions so far? Okay, so now I'm going to save this document, and I'm going to share it with you guys. Along with that, I'm going to I will be sharing the PPT slides also, whatever I have. So I have I mean slides for each of the concepts. Okay, so for the different types of performance testing also, I do have the slides which I will share. Okay, the only reason why I didn't share the slide right away is I wanted to write some points on the notepad so that you will remember it for longer duration. Okay, so you see this text, I do have some slides for that. See here. Okay, so I do have some slides. Okay, so we will discuss. I will share these documents with you guys. Okay, we will discuss again. No, any questions so far? How many of you joined today, only today? Please go through that previous session, recorded session. Any questions from you guys who joined only today with respect to course content or anything? Okay, so I'm stopping the recording here for today.